A key component of the modern world economy, the chemical industry delivers products and innovations to enhance everyday life. It is also an industry in transformation, where chemical executives and workers are delivering growth and industry-changing advancements while responding to pressures from investors, regulators, and public opinion. Discover how leading companies are approaching these challenges here on The Chemical Show. Join Victoria Meyer, president of Progressio Global and host of The Chemical Show, as she speaks with executives across the industry and learns how they are leading their companies to grow, transform, and push industry boundaries on all frontiers. Here's your host, Victoria Meyer.
Hi, I'm Victoria Meyer. Welcome back to The Chemical Show. This week, I am speaking with George Vann, who is the president of EcoServices, which is a part of Ecovyst. George has 30 plus years of leadership experience in the chemical industry and an extensive background leading diverse teams in a variety of areas: commercial, manufacturing, procurement. He's worked at some leading companies that you all know, W.R. Grace, BASF, and Engelhart. And George is also an U.S. Army veteran and has a BS in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech and an MBA from Georgia Southern University. So George and I are going to be having a great conversation and talking about a wide variety of things that you guys are going to find interesting. So George, welcome to The Chemical Show.
Thanks, Victoria. Thanks for inviting me to join The Chemical Show.
I appreciate having you here. What's your origin story? What got you interested in chemicals and what ultimately led you to where you are at EcoServices?
So I guess I kind of got started looking at manufacturing as an exciting kind of career. I remember when I was a child, my father was a plant manager at a plant that made fiberglass bathtubs. And I remember one time touring it and thinking, hey, this is really cool. Just the process for making it, all the things that were going on, all the people doing different stuff. So I ended up going to Georgia Tech and graduating with a mechanical engineering degree. And I went from Georgia Tech into the military for 4.5 years. I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship, and that helped pay for school. And I went into the Army. And when I graduated, or when I finished the Army, I started saying, okay, now what's next? You know, where am I going to go? And I started looking for opportunities. And I joined Engelhart Corporation as a maintenance supervisor. So I worked in maintenance for a while, kind of graduated into operations, became a plant manager of my own. Then I moved into business roles. BSF came along about 2006 timeframe, bought Engelhart. So I transitioned from Engelhart to BASF. Worked in a variety of roles in BSF, commercial roles, as well as a little bit of manufacturing. And then I left BASF in 2017 and joined W.R. Grace as head of their sales for specialty catalyst. We sold polyolefins catalyst, polypropylene, polyethylene catalyst, as well as chemical catalyst. And then about a year ago, I was looking for kind of like what's next in my career, and this opportunity came up with Ecovyst and EcoServices, and I decided that this was a next good career progression, and I moved over to EcoServices August of last year.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about EcoServices, because I think a lot of people probably don't know who they are.
Yeah. So EcoServices is part of Ecovyst. Ecovyst, some people may be familiar with PQ, and PQ went through some strategic realignment back in the 2021 timeframe, 2020, 2021. And it came out of that realignment, rebranding itself as Ecovyst. It was a more leaner, more nimble company. And Ecovyst is primarily a material science, catalyst, and services company. And there are two businesses within Ecovyst. One is the catalyst technologies, and the other one is EcoServices. So what is EcoServices? Within EcoServices, we have kind of like 4 segments. We produce regenerative sulfuric acid that is used in oil refineries. And then we also produce virgin sulfuric acid, as well as we have a waste treatment section of our business where we treat hazardous waste and actually burn it in our furnaces and use the heat as part of the recovery process. And then our last segment is catalyst activation, which we activate catalyst that's used in hydroprocessing and renewable fuels.
Ah, interesting. So it's maybe a really old school circular business in its own way.
Absolutely, it is. So a lot of what we do with refineries is we take the spent sulfuric acid they use to make alkylates, they use it and then send it back to us. We basically process it and uh, increase its strength back to what is needed in the process in the refinery. They use it and send it back. So it's a circular in some way. It's a circular process. It's basically an old process that's been recycling sulfuric acid for years and years and years.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. All right, we're going to come back to that in a little bit, but let's
Okay.
start with you and a bit of your history. So you were in the U.S. Army for 4+ years,
Right.
which is just a great and actually a somewhat unique background, I think, for a lot of folks. I guess number one, did you do anything exciting? And maybe more importantly, what did the Army teach you that you've been able to apply to business?
Okay. So the exciting part. So I have to lead with this, and people always kind of look at me with the side eye. I was stationed in Hawaii with
Oh,
the 25th.
George.
So that was kind of exciting in and of itself.
Yeah.
I was with the 25th Infantry Division and I was in an engineer battalion, the 65th Engineer Battalion. What was interesting, though, is that battalion and that division had responsibility across Asia Pacific at the time. And so we went on multiple deployments where we went to different countries from anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, working with with the host military on military exercises. So I got an opportunity to go to Korea, Japan, Thailand, Australia, and that was exciting because I got to meet a lot of different new people. I got to experience new cultures and really gave me a whole new appreciation for the Asian culture, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
That's interesting. It wasn't enough to keep you there past your 4.5 years, though, huh?
Well, in the Army, like in some businesses, after a few years, it's time to move. And so
Yeah,
when it was time to move, I was like, maybe it's time to do something else.
got it. So, how have you applied your learnings from the Army into business? What I mean, I think that we always talk about the military being a great foundation, but
Uh-huh.
for you, what have you seen that's been really applicable?
So the thing that I appreciate about the Army that was very helpful, and I've used ongoing since I left the Army and came into business, was the importance of leadership. The Army stresses really does a great job of training leaders at all levels within the organization. And a lot of people think, well, if it's in the military leaders, don't you just give orders? Some people do, and it's really not like that. I mean, in order to be effective leader, whether it's in the military and business, you can't just use your hierarchical authority to say, "I told you to go do this, go do this." You really have to understand how to work with people, how to use your influence, how to listen to different points of views, and how to make the best decision. And so, you take that and you can apply that regardless of what organization you're in. So when I left the Army and went into, maintenance and into different roles and to manufacturing or business roles, learning what are the key important things you need to know, working with people, getting different points of view, making decisions that understanding the consequences of your decision, but not waiting to make a decision, making a decision, and then taking accountability for your actions. All of those were important things that I learned in the Army that I've carried on since then.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I read something recently. I don't know. There's been a whole lot of books and other things about the power of habits and the power of routine. And one of the statements I read recently said that one of the reasons that former military members and leaders are very successful in business is because they learned that power of routine and habits and stuff. Would you agree with that? Do you find that to be true for you?
I certainly think there's a level of discipline that you gain in the military that carries forward in self-discipline. I mean, it starts with little things like, you get up early when you're in the Army, and I still get up early. You get ahead of things. Planning whether you're going in front of a briefing or whether you're going to a meeting, is making sure you don't just walk in there not prepared. So it's a discipline about how you approach things that I think, absolutely, I think you take that from the military and you can apply it in business.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about business. So you've worked with a variety of companies.
Mm-hmm.
In some respects, they seem to have gotten progressively smaller. Like if we think about the Army being the giant corporation, Engelhart,
Right.
maybe not so much, but what are the similarities and differences that you've seen as you've migrated through your career?
Well, if you think about a business just from a generic point of view, and whether you're in a really big corporation, which I've been in, or smaller companies, there's some things that are fundamental across multiple businesses. So, one of the things that always comes up is, well, how are we going to grow? Most companies, very few companies will say, I'm not growing anymore, and we're stagnant, and we're just happy.
Yeah.
So how are we going to grow? Another thing is, well, how do I provide value to my customers? What is it they're looking for, and how can I provide value to the customer? Another one that I've noticed, particularly recently, but it's actually been around a long time, is how do you attract and retain good talent? Everybody has that on their mind. Talent is something that's always in demand.
Yeah.
So those are some similarities between the different organizations I've been associated with. If you look at differences, probably one of the biggest differences is resources. So, when you're in a big company or a big organization, bureaucracy like the military, you've got people that can do a lot of different things and are very specialized. As you get to smaller companies, you start to wear multiple hats. There's not like an expert to go see for some that does, something for specific. You have to, maybe you got your HR hat on today, and maybe you've got your operations hat on today, and tomorrow you've got your strategic hat on. It's not just one thing that you're doing in small organizations. And it's not that they don't have people, but they don't have lots of people. And so everybody's got to kind of divvy up and get things done.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. And I've gone from big to small to tiny, where you have to hold a lot of different hats. And it's that, I mean, it's fun, but there are days that you're like, isn't there somebody to hand this off to? Why has this come to me?
Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
sure wish there would be somebody else who could help me with this. Well, that somebody else is you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, post pandemic 2022 and 23 has probably been more challenging than a lot of people anticipated. I think we knew that, there was going to be some slowdown in business, but it's been different, right? It's been a different couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
How are the events of the past year, when you look at the Russia-Ukraine war, inflationary pressures, et cetera, how are they affecting eco-services?
So we're in a good spot in terms of our business model, because although we produce and we sell sulfuric acid, really we're more of a service industry or service business model, kind of like industrial gases.
Yeah.
And so in that vein, we're not as we're more resilient in tough and challenging economic times. You can have huge windfalls, or it can be, feast or famine. So with our business, 2022 overall was a good year because there was strong demand across multiple industries or multiple markets that we service. We've come out of the pandemic in a pretty good position. During the pandemic, just like everyone else, things were kind of slow and everybody kind of slowed down. But now we feel like we're positioned well for growth for the future.
Yeah. Interesting. And are there specific tactics or approaches that you find, basically you've learned at EcoServices or you've applied from your career that you guys take to shore up business during these slower at times, or, as they start speeding up?
So one of the things that's kind of important for our business is we have long-term relationships with our customers, and that's important. That kind of helps mitigate some of the more challenging economic times. And so
Yeah.
these long-term relationships, we do that based on having long-term contracts. And that helps. That's two ways. Then refineries can know that they can depend on us. We're there every day. Refineries run 365 days, so do we. They know they can depend on us, and we know we can depend on that customer. So I would say, long-term relationships and continuing to develop those relationships with customers, and then long-term contracts to support those relationships. Those are
Yeah.
critical areas for us as we look to, weather any economic storms and also for the growth for the future.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So when you think about the future, a lot of your business is tied to refineries. And, I think everybody's got a bit of a question about what is the future of refineries when we look at the this push towards electrification and electric vehicles and stuff. How are you looking at that? Or what are you guys seeing from where you sit today?
We're kind of in a unique position because we straddle some of the more traditional mature industries like refining, and we also support some of the emerging technologies or the technologies that are getting more focused, like for renewable fuels and electrification. So first, from the refining standpoint, we think there's still a long runway for refineries, for refined products. There's still a lot of internal combustion engines out there on the road,
Yeah.
and they're not going away, in the next 5 years. At the same time, there is an ongoing push that will continue for cleaner burning fuels. And so when refineries need to be able to blend stock to get those lower emissions and cleaner burning fuels, they use alkylate. And alkylate is made through using sulfuric acid as part of the process. And so that's not going away. We think there's a long runway with that. And then, so that's on the mature side. On the emerging side, as we go more and more toward electrification, there's demand for things like copper. Copper is there's a lot of news around, the copper demand. Well, in copper mining, they use sulfuric acid. And sulfuric acid is important in the processing of extracting the ore from the copper from the ore. So all of this is where we have a nice balance between mature industries that we think are still going to have a long runway and the new emerging industries where there's things like renewable fuels, mining, battery production that we'll see much longer in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you'll be adapting your business to meet some of these new markets and market demands, but you see continued potential and potential growth.
Yes, absolutely. So we are looking at what's the shift. We're looking at, okay, how does it shift and being prepared. So as there may be a decline in gasoline consumption, for instance, we look at how we can transition to more increased virgin acid production.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've touched on circularity, and in fact, you guys have in many ways a fairly circular business in the sense that you're regenerating products, and that you're using not just virgin sulfuric acid, but repurposed or cleaned up. I know you have a better word for that, sulfuric acid. How do you guys see circularity? How do your stakeholders see you? Are you under pressure as it relates to this? Do you feel like your narrative is well understood in terms of the fact that it's not just kind of this old, stinky, dirty industry, but that you've actually are having a circular business? It is a sustainable process and it is supportive of these new technologies.
So I would say sustainability is a critical part of what we're trying to communicate to the investment community, as well as to our customers, as well as to our employees. Recently, we were awarded Ecovyst Gold certification.
Congratulations!
Which,
that's a big deal.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a big deal, and that kind of shows that we're committed to sustainability and to being a more sustainable company. At the same time, like I mentioned, we're looking at, okay, how do our businesses, both Catalyst and Ecoservices, contribute to existing sustainable practices as well as sustainable practices in the future? And so, as I mentioned, we're involved with the recycling or recovery of spent sulfuric acid, which, a lot of people don't realize this. If we didn't do that, all that acid would have to be disposed of, probably through a deep injection well by recovering it and reusing it again. So it's really getting the message out that even, quote, industries that are mature, that, may not have as interesting a technology, really have a part in sustainability practices going forward.
Yeah. Does this become part of your employee value proposition? So we started talking, I know you referenced that talent,
Yes.
and finding the right people is a bit challenging, right? And I think we see this across the chemical industry, aging workforce, a desire for more hybrid working, maybe a bit of a disdain for these old industries. What are you and EcoServices seeing as it relates to talent and availability?
So we talked about that earlier on around the importance of talent, and having not only attracting, but you also want to retain, because you don't want them just come in the door. You don't want to get great talent and they leave 2 years later, go someplace else. I think technically degreed individuals are at a premium. Whether it's engineers, chemists, anyone with some type of technical degree is at a premium. There's also a premium for highly skilled vocational type trades. So, think about mechanics, think about welders, think about I&E technicians, instrument and electric technicians. All of those are important in manufacturing and industrial industries. Okay. And so what we're seeing is that, whether it's your big oil companies or your petrochemical companies or a smaller company like us, we're all fighting for the same talent. So you mentioned a value proposition. You have to kind of create a value proposition that says, okay, why would I want to come to work for a smaller company like Ecovyst, EcoServices, versus working for a big, ExxonMobil? And so the things that we try to do is create a unique value proposition that says, there are things that you can do and experience with a smaller company that it may take you years to experience with a bigger company. And at the same time, you can have an immediate impact on the bottom line, where you may get lost as a number in a really, really big corporation.
Yeah. Do you see that there's a potential for faster progression in a smaller company?
There can be. I think that what we look at and what candidates try to balance out is there may be opportunity for faster progression, but there may not be as many opportunities. So, for instance, if you're in a really large company, maybe I can go to a one of 100 different locations. Well, we don't have 100 different locations. So, yes, there's opportunity for advancement, but it's not going to be the same as with a really big company.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it just depends on, people's perspectives in terms of what they value from a work style, work-life balance, impact, as you say, right? So, because there's this aspect of how much impact can you make, and it differs.
Yes. And in a small company, and Victoria, I know you know this, in a small company, individuals make a very big impact. It does. It's when you're in a bigger company, sometimes people scratch their head and they say, okay, I know this is important, but how does this impact, the bottom line? You don't have to worry about that in a small company. You know exactly what you're doing makes an impact.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting is you talked about, we've got the technically degreed talent, and it seems like, and I've got kids in college and who are doing engineering and computer sciences, STEM-based programs, and there seems to be a ton of growth, right? I keep, these universities continue to have bumper crops, so to speak, of freshmen and graduates, et cetera. So it feels like perhaps this degreed technical talent is going to work out. And yet there seems to be a gap in the trades.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys engaged in the community to help support that? What's going on? What can people be doing to help support the trades? Because those, again, as you say, there's a competition for talent, and it's not just the engineers, it's the electricians.
Exactly. Well, I do at some of our sites, we actually are working with like community colleges or vocational
Yeah.
institutions that are local that we're saying, okay, hey, maybe we can partner and maybe we can have interns come in, or maybe somebody can do like a trainee program. And it benefits both of us. You know, it
Yeah.
helps the local community college or vocational institute with the training of their students. It helps us introduce students to our company and they say,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I kind of like this. Maybe I want to come work for this company. I really want to look at how we expand that broader because in some of my previous companies, we actually had more formal relationships. And that
Mm,
developed kind of, as you mentioned, a pipeline. You know, there's a pretty good pipeline of engineers coming into the industry. It's these vocational technical degrees that really there may not be as strong a pipeline. And we
yeah.
need those individuals as much as we need the engineers.
Yeah. Interesting. It's a dilemma. I would
It
tell
is
you,
a
you know,
dilemma.
Georgia, it's a dilemma because as a parent, I'm pushing my kids to college,
Oh, yeah.
um, right, directionally, and yet I also recognize that hey, there is a lot of non-degreed, skilled talent and roles and opportunities available um, that we need people to fill. I don't know who it's going to be though, George.
I remember about 10 years ago I was down in the Gulf Coast and we were really there was a big push for capital projects and we were looking for welders, pipe fitters, and you just couldn't find them to staff these big capital projects. And those individuals, if you had a little experience, could make six figures. And I'm
Right?
thinking, wow, when I graduated from college, six figures was kind of like a ultimate goal. And these
It's like
are
the holy grail.
individuals,
You're hoping to
it
get
was a
there.
holy
Yeah.
grail. And these individuals, now it's a unique skill set and it requires some experience, but those individuals have been and will continue to be in high demand.
Yeah. Interesting. Good stuff. So what's next for you guys, George? When you look ahead at the rest of 2023 going into 24, what's on your horizon?
So when we think about, kind of the horizon, right now we're in our strategic planning process. And so we're looking at, okay, what's the next 5 years look like? And,
Yeah.
just like I mentioned earlier, whether it's a small company or big company, you're looking at how do I grow? So we're looking at, where we want to grow. And we are, as we mentioned, very strong in some of the mature industries, but we also recognize the trend and where companies are going in terms of being more green, more sustainable. And so, how we grow with them and where are those opportunities? And we've got several that we're looking at that will, say, okay, this is where we want to grow. We think this is a good growth area for us.
Cool. Awesome. I can't wait to see what that looks like for you.
Me too.
Awesome. Well, George, thank you for joining me today on the Chemical Show. This has been really awesome to have this conversation and learn more about you and about Ecoservices and where the industry is going. So thanks for joining us on the Chemical Show.
Thanks very much, Victoria. Enjoyed having it.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for listening. Keep listening, keep following, keep sharing, and we will talk to you again soon.
We've come to the end of today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed your time with us and want to learn more. Simply visit thechemicalshow.com for additional information and helpful resources. Join us again next time here on The Chemical Show with Victoria Meyer.